All right, everyone, it is interview time, and we are here today with Gigi Engle, and I'm super excited about this. I know I say that for every episode, and I feel like, I don't know, we keep like stepping up with these like dream guests.
That's because we have amazing guests. That's why you can say it.
I know. There's all these amazing guests that we keep having, and it's like, really, we get to have that guest and that guest and that guest? This is amazing. So Gigi Engle is here. We're talking about porn and sex addiction. Is it real? What do you do with it? If it is, what if it's not? What do you do with that? So you already heard a little bit about Gigi in the bio, in the intro. But Gigi, welcome to our show. And let's just open it up with, can you please tell our listeners how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Longtime listener to Shameless Sex. I'm Gigi Engle. I'm a psychosexual and relationship therapist based in London. And I got to where I am today in a sort of strange manner. So I started out about a decade ago at a very small, at the time, millennial company. You might all know it today, Elite Daily, shout out. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of writing all about sex. And something that I realized pretty early on was that there just wasn't a lot of journalism that was sort of really well researched or had experts that were a part of it. It was more like 10 different ways to make your pussy taste different. And I was kind of it'd be kind of cool to do some feature journalism around sex. So I started doing that, really took off. It was really awesome. And then in 2017, I decided to go freelance. So I started writing for all these magazines. Specifically at the time, it was Teen Vogue. And I wrote an article that my editor suggested that was about anal sex. And it was very basic, kind of how to do it safely, how it works, kind of just basic stuff. And this is for Teen Vogue. Let's keep that in our context peripheral. And I thought nothing of it because I have written some controversial shit. I had written, how to masturbate and all this kind of stuff. So I didn't really think anything of it. And it kind of turned into a shit show. It turned into sort of this mass trolling media nightmare that was actually good for me because it ended up launching my career, really. And I was called a sodomite on Fox News. I wasn't aware we were still using the term sodomite in the year of our Lord 2017, but it is what it is. And there was a public book burning of the Teen Vogue magazine. Yeah, by this now banned from YouTube white supremacist. So, and he she burned all these books, all these magazines of Teen Vogue. And I just remember the only thing I thought to myself was, oh my God, she thought I was in print. I was so flattered. And that ended up getting me a book deal, which was awesome. And I wrote my first book, which is behind me here, which is called All the Fucking Mistakes. And it was kind of like a guide to sex, love, and life, kind of based on my experiences. It was very agony ants, kind of this is how you do kink. This is how you avoid STIs. This is what you do with sex toys. And it was a really great experience for me. And my freelance career took off after that. But based on the Teen Vogue backlash, I realized that what I really needed to do was get certified in sex education. Because even though I was an investigative journalist, I realized that sexuality is so nuanced and it's such a sensitive topic that which actually links very much into our theme for today, honestly, because of the nuance and the incorrect messaging that people have around it. I kind of realized I needed to be better for my readers. So I went back to school. I got certified in sex education. And then a few years later, I moved to London and I was like, what do I do now? And decided to pursue a career in sex therapy. So I went back to school again, did my post-grad work, and now I'm a psychosexual therapist. And here we are today.
I love this story. And I did not expect the book burning thing.
I know.
And sometimes what they say, right? There's people that say, and I say it sometimes, any press can be good press, even when it's
stand by
bad
that.
Press. I do too. So not only are you a brilliant person and so genius, and I love that you're an investigative journalist, and you still are, especially that you focus a lot of your attention on sex, which is so needed, but you're also a bang twin with me, meaning she has fringe in England, but bangs. So if you're not watching us on YouTube, y'all, check out Gigi, because I think she might win the Bang Award or Fringe Award, as they would say. They don't know what bangs.
More banging.
No, fringe. It's called fringe,
More
right?
fringent. I like.
So I just want to say I have respect for anyone that can rock a fringe and that can rock the fuck out of being a genius writer, because it's not easy. So thank you. So we're talking about porn and sex addiction today. So can we talk about what are the pros and cons of watching porn, and how can porn enhance my sex life? I know that it does. And how is it harmful? So there's kind of a 3-tiered question here.
Okay, so yeah, it's a big topic. Basically, porn can be really beneficial for relationships. So we'll start with the positive stuff. So it can really improve like your ability to fantasize and be able to bring that into your relationship with your partner. And it can actually spike libido because it gets the sexual arousal process started. It can be something new, which a lot of couples in long-term relationships especially need novelty and excitement in order to keep their hormone levels like high to have desire. So it can be really helpful for that. But a really important caveat to that is that it's really dependent on how both partners feel about porn. If the partners understand that porn isn't a source of erotic material, that it's something that can be used as a sexual enhancement, it's not something to be feared or something that would be considered cheating per se, then they really can benefit from it. And that kind of brings us into the whole, is porn harmful thing? And I just want to qualify before I get into like how it can harm your sex life, because it really can't, because unless you feel shame around it. Unless porn is inhibiting your everyday function in life, if you're staying in your room for like 24 hours a day or like 20 hours a day watching porn, and you're not going to work and you're not seeing your friends and you're not going to social engagements because you're watching porn all the time, yeah, you might want to reevaluate your relationship with porn. But the vast majority of people have seen all of this media propaganda that's very anti-porn, which is very based in these religious organizations like Your Brain on Porn and others that are very based in religion, even though they try to market themselves as not being religious because they want to be palatable. And they think that there is this whole generation that's being destroyed by porn. So they have all of this media messaging coming in. And then on top of that, there is all this like shame around sexuality in general and around porn itself too. So if you have those feelings around porn and that's how you view it, it can be very difficult to bridge the gap in order to have it be beneficial for your relationship. And I think that a lot of the people who have identified themselves as porn addicts, the research has shown that the vast majority of people who are much more likely to identify with that term either consider themselves to be socially and morally conservative and or have a religious background or are religious. And that's what the data shows us. Porn is actually neutral. And the data has proven this. It's not going to harm your sex life. It's not going to hinder your sex life. And you can watch it. It's not going to harm you. You cannot watch it. That's not going to harm you either. And the real issue is media literacy and understanding that porn is entertainment and being able to understand the role of shame within our sexual selves. And that's the real foundational issue, not the porn itself.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many questions.
Mic drop.
Yeah. So podcast over.
I know.
But I have so many questions. And one I will start with. And so we just talked about how porn can enhance your sex life, and you were already talking about about a little bit of porn addiction. So how do you define porn or sex addiction? And maybe you don't agree with it because other people are saying that, and maybe you disagree that it's an addiction. So my next question with that, like on the side of that, is porn and sex addiction real?
So there is absolutely no substantial evidence to conclude that porn or sex can be addictive. You cannot be addicted. A lot of these religious organizations use the word dopamine to make it sound scientific, like, oh, the dopamine rush, or you're going to be addicted to your dopamine. But actually, there's no possible way that you can be addicted to your brain chemicals. It's the same ideology that you'll hear with food addiction. You can't be addicted to food either. It's not the same thing. What it can happen is that it can be a compulsive behavior, in the sense that you use porn to soothe an underlying stressor. So it could be life, could be stress, could be parents, it could be a whole host of things. So you're experiencing this very stressful, uncomfortable emotional state, and you may use porn, food, yoga even to soothe that distress rather than actually coping with the underlying stressor in order to soothe that, fix that. Therefore, the other thing becomes less of a crutch. And research, as I had said, has shown that porn is actually quite neutral. It doesn't harm, it doesn't really make you better. It's very much a neutral thing. And I think that what's really important is that we're thinking more critically about the media that we're consuming. And this doesn't just include porn, it's basically everything that we see on social media, everything we get from the media, is to think about the ways that we are viewing things. And I think being able to critically look at those things, how is this impacting my life? Is what I'm seeing entertainment? Is what I'm seeing something that might be a hyper-realized version of life? When we talk about porn specifically, you might see something like, Big Black Cock or like Ebony Queen, which are like very racialized, reductive ways of describing people of color. And what you are seeing when you see those descriptions is you're seeing the stereotype of people. And I think that having media literacy and understanding that is really important part of this.
I have just one other question on the addiction piece, because I love everything that you said. So what I'm hearing is that people throw around like you're the dopamine rush. So it's not that people are necessarily they're addicted to porn. So I'm my brain's trying to understand the difference between being addicted.
I was comparing it to retail therapy because I do that, right?
Yeah.
Where I get
it's a coping.
It's
thing.
like a coping mechanism, but that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh my God, I totally do that. Am I addicted to shopping? No, but I like some retail therapy when I want to distract myself from the real fucking issues and the stresses of life.
Well, I feel like people can get addicted to just about anything, but maybe it depends on how you look at the word addicted or addiction. You become compulsive,
dieting, healthy eating,
and reliant on it.
Language is an important factor here. And the reason language is really important is when we throw around a word like addiction, we impact the way that people are treated for it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you try to treat something like sex addiction or porn addiction with something like a 12-step program or abstinence or giving up the substance, that is very much like laden in shame. And it doesn't treat the underlying stressor that is causing the problem in the first place. When we're talking about substance abuse, like alcohol and drugs, you're addicted to a substance. Your brain is chemically dependent on a substance, and you go through withdrawal when you do not have that substance. There is no evidence to suggest that if you don't watch porn, you don't do retail therapy, you stop eating doing the binge eating, there is no withdrawal period. And that is a critical component of how we define addiction. And so language actually is important because this is how people end up in things like a 12-step program, like SLA. And that's the incorrect way to treat compulsive
What is SLA?
behaviors.
Is it
Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous?
Wow, love's thrown in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very based in shame. It's based in religion. One of the key components of it that is frankly disturbing is this idea that at every single meeting, you have to admit that you're powerless to your addiction, which negates culpability and being able to have autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
So you just are like, oh, I'm addicted to sex. I'm addicted to porn. I can't help myself. I can't do anything about it. And then where is the healing?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I think that's a mind-blowing, recognizing those different pieces, those factors. Like everyone talks about porn in this negative light, and sex as well, masturbation even. People talk about how they can get addicted to their vibrators. I get asked that and I know, Amy, that we've been together at times where people will raise their hand during a product training, and ask if it's possible because they don't want to use a vibrator because they've heard it's possible to get addicted to the vibrator. And my answer is always, no, you don't get addicted to your vibrator. It might be, you might be normalizing it and needing it all the time because you're used to it relieving a sort of sexual, maybe you feel pressure outside of your sexual life, but then the vibrator gives you comfort, which is what happens for me. But I love that. It's like popping a Xanax could be, that gives you, right. That can
changes your brain.
Exactly. It gives you a different,
popping a
Xanax
reaction. And you can become chemically dependent on it. You can't become chemically addicted to your vibrator. I have a lot of questions from people who will people who come into my clinic who will say like, am I desensitized? Have I like ruined myself for sex? And like what it is actually is that you can become conditioned to a certain kind of stimulation. It's a lot like if you sit on your foot for a really long time and it falls asleep. It's like that can sometimes, it'll come back. The sensation will come back. And the way to deal with that is to have varied forms of stimulation, starting to use lube, having different kinds of vibrators in on the mix, if that is something that is such a concern to you. But I like to really push back on this conditioning that like, oh, I only come in this one way. What's wrong with me? I actually think that pleasure is pleasure and an orgasm is an orgasm. And if that's the way that you come, we need to stop shaming that so much and stop putting things on such a hierarchy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Agreed.
You answered this next question a little bit. I just want the listeners to know, because the issue of porn, am I watching too much porn? So are there signs they should be aware of? And I know you touched on this a little bit, but just to dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah. So I have a lot of people who come into my clinic who are coming in for compulsive sexual behaviors. And the vast majority of people who come in are completely fine. The way that they describe their porn is they feel out of control. They feel like they can't stop. They feel like they can't do it. And what they describe is like they go to their jobs, they have their friends, they have a normal life. Maybe they watch porn 10 minutes a day, but they feel addicted to it because of something that's called moral incongruence. They believe that porn is bad. They believe that what they're doing is out of control. And therefore, it makes them believe that they are a porn addict or a sex addict. The vast majority of people who believe that they have this addict label are actually completely okay. And it has a lot to do with shame. They may have also had like pretty neutral ideas about porn and about their porn habits, but perhaps a partner caught them watching porn. And porn wasn't something that was agreed upon in their relationship contract. And their partner has now shamed them and told them that they're a porn addict. And now they have to go get sex therapy because they have a porn problem. The problem isn't porn. The problem is shame.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time it becomes a compulsive sexual behavior issue is if it's interfering with your life in a substantial way. So a lot of the work that I do isn't about changing someone's porn habits or changing someone's masturbation habits. It's about finding congruence and authentic sexuality in a way that feels safe and contained for them and being able to align those messaging. Sure, there are people who will come into clinic and they are completely debilitated by the way that they're using pornography. It's pretty rare. Sure, it does happen, but that's a lot of work understanding how to use self-soothing techniques, understanding anxiety, understanding the underlying issues that porn is momentarily soothing in order to gain more self-control over your nervous system so that you don't need to lean on a crutch. Mm-hmm. And that's rare, but it does happen. That doesn't make porn addictive. It's that porn is a self-soothing mechanism for life.
So I just want to reiterate and correct me if I'm wrong, Gigi. And what I'm hearing or what I'm believing from this is that you could watch porn 12 times a day and still be a friend, a person that's getting their work done, a person that is a contributing member of their community, and you don't have an addiction to porn.
Yeah, there's no such thing as porn addiction.
Exactly. That's what I just want to reiterate to listeners out there, because people ask. And I think those boundaries or those rules about when you're addicted, it's just like the same when you're considered to have a sexless marriage, as if like you don't have sex more than 11 times, or if you have sex less than 11 times a year. Who decided
that?
Exactly.
Those useless stats.
Totally. So I just want to reiterate, because I think it's important for people to know there have been times where I've watched porn 5 times a day and I haven't felt the shame around it, but I'm sure if I had told people, I would have saw 1 out of 5 might have shamed me. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I'd be like, maybe I do have a problem. So I totally get it. And I guess I just wanted to,
or you Google it and
to affirm.
And the whole internet says you have a problem.
Well, yes. I mean, it's really Googling it and talking about sort of the internet. It's like, you'll see things from The Guardian to HuffPo to honestly places I've written that are like, oh, well, we all know that porn addiction is real, or porn addiction ruined my life. And it's propaganda.
Mhm.
I mean, what likely ruined that person's life was the shame and trauma they experienced before that, is my guess, and not the actual porn part. Not ruined your life, but then you found this other thing that was the Band-Aid or the crutch, and that's the thing that you point the fingers at instead of here's all this other stuff that really changed me and hurt me, and but good for you for finding a Band-Aid, because I mean, we all know that. Well, not we all. We know, the three of us know that when we have trauma and shame, and especially when we're younger, we don't know how to comprehend it and work with it. Or even as you're older, a lot of people don't have the tools for that. You find what you can find. And I know that we can shame ourselves or be like, oh, I'm not a good enough person. I'm a bad person for relying on porn or drugs or alcohol or whatever. And you're doing the best that you can. And you sure there's better ways to treat yourself, maybe. And also, I think there's just like a compassion piece and not pointing to the thing that made you feel good. Like, let's look at the things that actually are the pain points instead.
And I mean, I think it's also important to look at the fact that places like Exodus Cry and Fight the New Drug, one is Christian and one is Mormon organization. And shocking news, fundamentalist religious background does not equal good for sex. And this whole idea of sex addiction actually came out of the 80s AIDS crisis.
Mhm.
And it was very much based in shame. And this is stuff that's spoon fed to us. And you combine that with the, frankly, completely dog shit sex education that we get in America. And what do you expect? People see porn and they suddenly think that that's real life. It's like learning how to cook from watching Hell's
Guy
Kitchen.
Ferrari or whatever.
Yeah, he's not a cook though, is he?
Yeah.
No,
I was trying to say Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon
Ramsay.
Gordon, yeah.
It was like it starts.
I knew it as soon as it came out of my mouth. I was like, "That's not
Wrong
who I meant.
one. One of the G's.
That
One of
guy
those-
has a
one
lot
of
of
those
restaurants in
strange-
Vegas.
Yeah.
The guy Ferrari.
I had a client who asked me, like, okay, I masturbate 5 times a day. Is that bad? And so the questions, and this brings me to my next question. We already asked about like what people should be aware of, but I'm going to get to more like the tools. So my questions for him were like, okay, well, how is it affecting your life? Like, are you going to work and feeling like you can't, hang out at your work desk? You need to go in the bathroom and go do this thing there, which is like still, in my opinion, considered a public space, even if you can close the door and lock it. Or are you, driving your car? Are you not going to hang out with your family? Which is what April was saying earlier. Like, is it getting in the way of these things? So let's use that person as an example. What if they're like, okay, my relationship with porn is feeling like it is getting in the way of those things. I am not going to the work meeting. I am doing this when I'm supposed to show up at the family dinner and I can't leave my house because I want to keep masturbating and watching porn or whatever. And so this could be sex addiction, or not addiction, but like, compulsion with sex, porn, or masturbation. And so if they wanted to work on it, what could they do?
Well, you'd want to see a qualified sex therapist who does not identify as a sex addiction therapist. If you see somebody use the word addiction, even if they're ASECT registered, even I'm in the UK, so COSRT registered, if they say the word addiction, you run in the opposite direction because they're going to treat it in a way that's like abstaining and cutting it off. And like basically making you feel like shit when you already feel like shit about the way you're behaving with it. So find a qualified sexual therapist who specializes in compulsive sexual behaviors and does not work from a 12-step model. Somebody who understands nervous system regulation, who has training specifically in the UK, I would say specifically if you've been trained by Silva Neves, you will... He's like the main he wrote the book on compulsive sexual behaviors, the king, the prince. That will be like a good way to go. But anyone who's like says compulsive sexual behaviors or out of control sexual behaviors, that's somebody who's probably in line with what you would want to work with. Don't be afraid to shop around with therapists. I like to think a lot of it like it's like dating on dating apps. It's like talk to them, get that free consultation, find out if they're your vibe, and then go with it. Because you want somebody who isn't going to shame you. The way that it kind of works, like when you're in that space, is that the therapist is going to want to address both what it is that is the underlying stressors, the stuff that is perpetuating the cycle, perpetuating the behavior, and ways that we can reintegrate erotic material into your life for it to feel authentic and safe and healthy for you. If you're a person who is now negating friendships, negating work, isn't going to do everything because it's such a consuming part of their life, There's a lot of inner work that needs to be done around nervous system regulation and self-soothing techniques in order to recognize when you get to that point of emotional overload where you reach for the porn to immediately soothe. Because if you have alternative ways to soothe yourself, to calm yourself down, it's not that the urge to go for porn or go for food or whatever it is, it doesn't go away, but it turns the volume down. So you have a moment to actually think, is this something that I want to do? What is it that I'm trying to soothe, rather than actually doing the inner work? And then while you're working with a therapist, you'll process a lot of these emotions, figure out the messaging that is authentic to you, that you heard about porn, that you heard about sex, that you heard about addiction. Find out what it is that was fed to you. What of this is coming from shame, society, religion? And what of this is authentic to your own sexuality? And I think a really key component to this, lastly, is that there's this idea that you have to just give up porn. That if you're, I'm doing air quotes again, but like addicted to porn, you just stop. You go cold turkey and you can never use it again. That's a real surefire way to feel like shit about yourself when you watch porn again. It's not particularly realistic. It's also not fair to you. But what are ways that we can introduce erotic material into your life in a way that feels authentic and healthy? And your therapist will be there supporting you the entire way. And then you can really reestablish your relationship with erotic materials in a way that does feel authentic and healthy to you, that allows you to also maintain other areas of your life.
So one of the questions we were going to ask is, if I once had an issue with porn, does it mean I can never watch it again? What you're saying is not the case. And I think of, addiction stuff where the rate, everything's thrown into the same bubble of how we calculate the stats. And, the relapse rate is like something like 80 something percent. And I don't know if that's just, they're talking about substances and alcohol. I think it's just addiction in general. And I wonder what it'd be like if you didn't look at like, okay, I'm taking a break from watching porn and I watch porn again. Oh no, I relapse. Like how that would change the stats, and this idea that like,
even the word relapse, I would very much advise against.
Totally. What you're saying is it's not a relapse. It's finding and I don't really love the word healthy necessarily, but like a balanced or beneficial way, a way that helps you, supports your life, and isn't just like, oh, if I do this again, I'm the worst person ever. Maybe people need to do that with substances and alcohol because it's affecting your body in a different way than, just viewing something. Like you were saying, it's changing your internal chemistry and the way that you work with it. So I'm assuming that's what you're saying. Is that like
it's actually interesting that you bring that up, because that kind of wraps back around to what I was saying earlier about the religiosity of 12-step programs. I know that 12-step programs for people who have substance abuse issues can be very great, and that people really, I think the main thing that people find in those 12-step programs is community. But I don't necessarily think that that's the answer, even if it is substance abuse. Like if you're an alcoholic or you're addicted to drugs and you want to go to a 12-step program, more power to you. I'm not going to stop you. And I'm not going to stop you from going to SLA if you want to. I don't advise it, but you do you. But it's very much based in religion. There's a very shame-based, you're being held accountable, right? So like if you act like a human and you say like you're addicted to cocaine, and you make a mistake where you do cocaine again. So I was going to say heroin, but same thing, different day. It's like you're being held accountable in a way that can be quite shaming. And I don't know if that's necessarily helpful. So, like we were saying before, it's like reevaluating your relationship with what substance you're addicted to in a chemical sense with drugs or alcohol. And finding community doesn't necessarily have to involve 12-step programs.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll just add one other personal thing that I've actually never shared on the podcast before. And it'll be, yes, April probably knows what it is, but I won't share too many details about it because it's so very personal to me. And I know it's shameless sex, but it's not about sex. But I'm someone that has had addiction issues with substances, specific ones in my lifetime. And so did some 12-step ones, but did not. The religion thing was like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I found, all women's groups that, one specifically that is utilizing psychedelics as part of healing, which is something I've been doing for a long time as part of healing.
For you,
it's awesome. Yeah, it was amazing, and so it wasn't being a part of the group that made it so that I wanted to stop doing the thing. It was actually, for me personally, it was just to say, and this is different from what we're talking about, the porn, sex, and these kind of compulsions, right? Because for me, my body was hooked on a thing. It was, I could feel it in my cells, like hooked on a thing.
Chemical dependence.
That's chemical dependency. And my brain was too. The story of my brain that
your brain is literally dependent on it.
Yeah. And it's like, you won't be able to really manage without this thing because you'll struggle and you'll feel very alone and dark, whatever. And the thing that really helped me, and this is very different from what we're talking about again, I had to actually close the door entirely to say, I'll never do this thing again. It's just not in this lifetime. I can never do this thing again because I've abused it so heavily and become so dependent on it. And with the 12 steps world, that was like this branch that like they don't bring in any of the God stuff. And if you're into the God stuff, good for you. And if it works for you, good for you. It just wasn't what I wanted. And I didn't want to go in a place that created shame around something I already felt shame about. And I feel like I got a really great experience there where I could come out and be like, hey, I did use the word relapse. I started using this again, and no one shamed me. No one's like, oh my God. They're like, yeah, we've done that too. We're with you.
Community without shame. Who knew?
Yeah. Who knew?
And something that you really highlighted there that I just want to highlight quickly is like, when it comes to substance abuse, abstinence is the way usually forward for people. Because when you have an unhealthy relationship with a substance, it's an addictive chemical substance, alcohol, heroin, cocaine, whatever it is. You really do need to not use it anymore because your brain will immediately go back to that place. And that's one of the reasons that porn and sex addiction need to not be called addictions.
Yeah,
because
very different.
That's not how it works. You can have porn and sex in your life in a healthy way, in a way that feels authentic to you. You can't be a cocaine addict necessarily and then be like, oh, I'm just going to like use cocaine sometimes.
Yeah. It does. It doesn't work.
Your brain doesn't work that way.
And the last example I could make it really quick was just in my early 20s, I did think I had an issue with porn. That's when I was living in San Francisco. I was alone watching a lot of porn and I thought I had a problem with it. And then I just like decided for whatever life happened, I stopped watching it. Now I can watch it very easily. It's not a problem. I like watch it once and I'm not like, oh, now I need to watch it for the rest of my life. It feels very different for me. So I like that. Like for me, I have those two experiences. One, knowing when it is a chemical dependency and something that feels like an addiction. And one that was just like, I am being compulsive, but it doesn't mean
that's mindfulness though. You're being mindful. I think there's a lot of mindfulness practices that you can take in, which I've done for things that aren't chemical. The dopamine release, don't bring it to that, but I did. But for me, like the non substance abuse stuff, the things that I like, the retail therapy, the wine, I don't ever think that I'm addicted to alcohol, but I will just reach for a glass of wine at the end of my day because it's my stress reliever, right? And I'm like, wait, the mindfulness though, or masturbation. Yes. So I don't know. We haven't talked about tools for this, but I do want to bring the question. I know I don't want to go. This is such a good conversation.
I'm having the best time.
I am too. So of course we've taken away the pieces of shame, I think, during this interview about watching porn. However, I want to ask you a question because I think it does matter. So does the type of porn that you're consuming matter? Because I believe it does.
That's a very interesting question. I'm actually very glad you asked it. So there are a lot of messages that we get that porn infuses misogyny. And actually, the evidence of what people are actually watching and how people feel about women doesn't support that. In fact, there's been evidence that shows that people who watch pornography actually have better views of women than people who don't. With that being said, there are ways that we should be consuming porn in a way that is responsible as people who are consumers. And I want to qualify that by saying that this isn't just porn. This is all of our media. Where is it coming from? What is the messaging? What am I saying? Is this a place I can trust? So there are a couple of ways that you can watch pornography that are really great. You want to be sure that you're watching ethical pornography. That's kind of the way that we like slap organic on like a banana nowadays, but there are ways that you can tell that something is ethical. First of all, most small porn companies will have a thing on their website that explains exactly how they are ethical. So go and read that. But some key things to look for are the performers and the staff being paid in a way that they think is equitable for the work that they are doing. Are these sex workers themselves, go to their Twitter pages and their OnlyFans, are they talking about the company? Are they talking about the scenes that they did? It's very important that within an ethical porn structure, that the performers are performing acts that not only did they agree to beforehand, that on the day they felt comfortable doing. This is all part of this structure. And this isn't just about performers. Actually, the people who are editing, the people who are filming, how are they feeling? Are they a part of it? When in doubt, if you find a performer that you like and you want to be ethical, go to their OnlyFans, go to their pages, go to their content, pay for it directly, pay for your porn, because there are ways that we go to the store, we buy organic spinach and avocados and whatever. We want to put that stuff in our body, consume organic porn, because ethical porn, I should say, because from these mainstream porn sites, some of this porn was made in a way that is, it's not necessarily like bad. Like mainstream porn isn't necessarily bad, but it is made from a white, cis, hetero point of view. So when people watch porn who aren't a white, cis, hetero man, and they're like, this isn't really for me, I don't understand why I don't like this. It's because it wasn't made for you.
Also, bootleg weird porn, like where it's bad.
We'll find that stuff too. But it's like, pay for your shit. Like we pay for our Netflix, our Hulu, our Disney Plus. Pay for your porn. You're supporting these small creators, these small sex workers. I should say small business sex workers, not that they're small. And that's a really important part of this, is like understanding where you are getting your content. Sure, it's super easy to just like type in RedTube or whatever it is, but like that's how you know that what you're consuming is actually made by somebody who wanted to be there, who made something they wanted and promotes that content.
And that's important to highlight, because we're not advocating. I'm not. And I can guarantee that I'm speaking for all of us here on this interview, that we're not advocating for child pornography or porn that isn't consented to film. Exactly. This is all.
If something is not consented to, if something is with minors, that's not pornography. That's child sex trafficking. And that is unethical created content.
But I think it's important to highlight, because people will muddle those 2/3 different ways to describe what you're watching, because it is called child pornography when people talk about it. But you're absolutely right. And I love that. We have to understand that porn can be ethically consumed. And I love that advice, those pieces of advice, because that was quite a bit all in one answer to a question that I'm stoked that you brought that to everyone's attention, because it's important.
I have just one last question that is not exactly a tangent, because that's to go with what we were saying like a half an hour ago. But I remember these like articles that I saw, and I wanted to see what your opinion is before we wrap this up. There has been things that have suggested that porn has affected erectile function and ejaculatory control issues. What are your thoughts on this?
So the amount of times that I've seen this propagated in the media is, to put it lightly, worrying. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that pornography consumption is connected to ED. The studies that have been put out are very much, if you look at the people who funded them, they're all linked to these anti-porn. They're linked to these anti-porn, specifically your brain on porn organizations. The sample sizes are laughable. They are not peer reviewed, and porn is neutral. It is not something that causes ED. And the fact that this keeps getting propagated by not just mainstream media, but like well-known sex educators is worrying.
I wonder if this is the same category as that article that came out from Vice magazine that was based on a study of like 7 people that female ejaculation isn't real. Like all this probably the same things that are like,
that porn will, if you watch porn or masturbate, it'll lower testosterone. And there were like 10 people in the study, and none of the outside factors were actually factored in any way. Yeah, that's
my God. My partner said the other day, he's like, how many more ejaculations do you think I have left in my life? I was like, what?
A million, a zillion, quantifiable amounts.
I was like, you don't have to worry about that.
So cute.
He's like, that's your partner. Imagine the average person.
That's what I'm saying. And he's 55 years old. And I was like, babe, you're fine. Like,
keep on coming.
You don't have to
sit. You are good.
I was like, where are you getting this information? So yeah,
and that's a co-host of the Shameless Sex podcast. Yeah. God, we're in bad straits.
Well, I mean, I definitely debunked that myth to him, but he was like, really? Yeah. I mean, I did love it. I was like, that is kind of cute. It was adorable to me
That's
because I was like,
very
oh,
cute.
babe,
I
know.
don't worry. It's not like a period. You don't just have a number of eggs that you're going to drop. Okay. That's what I think he maybe was comparing it to. But I was like, no, it's
Like,
very much.
do I go into
it's very
menopause?
yeah. Like you're menopause. You're not going into
Menopause. Oh man.
But people still have orgasms in menopause, yo.
And he
That's your
menstruates.
next merch thing.
Yes.
Get a
Yeah,
t-shirt.
Menopause and menstruation.
Like Ken enough. I'm Ken enough.
Ken
All right.
enough. Oh,
Anyways,
Ken enough
stop bringing to Barbie. All right.
Well, this was so great. I love talking to you, Gigi, and thank you because this was not only insightful, but so helpful because we have this shame around both of these questions about porn addiction and sex addiction, right? Are these something that people need to worry about? And I think you really did break it down in a way that is understandable. And I'm glad that we got rid of some of this bullshit that is just festering underneath people's pleasure. Really, It really does come down to blocking people's ultimate pleasure. So that being said, I want to talk about your current offerings and also how can folks find you and work with you and get more of Gigi Engle?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Twitter. I don't know what his deal is. All at
whatever the fuck it
is what it is. Misogyny. You can find on all platforms of the misogynist at Gigi Engle. You can also find me at missgigiengle.com. And if you would like to work with me, you can go to the Therapy Yard, where I am currently working as an associate.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, beautiful.
And your podcast too? Remind everyone about your podcast.
Oh, yes. And I'm also the co-host of the Bad Break podcast, where we break down the most jaw-dropping, crazy breakups you've ever heard from a psychosexual and investigative journalist perspective.
Love it.
Okay. Well, I'm tuning into that one ASAP. So, wow. Thank you so much, Gigi. I know you're in the UK and it's getting late over there, but we would love to talk to you again, and gratitude for all you're doing for the world. Thank you for bringing people more pleasure. We really do value you and everything you brought to us today. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, love it. And to all of our Shameless Sex listeners out there, thank you for joining us every Tuesday and sometimes Fridays. And also, if you haven't bought our book, go to shamelesssex.com. You can check out Shameless Sex. It's almost like a choose your own adventure, but it's a choose your own pleasure path. Gigi has it right now. If you're not watching us on YouTube, check that out. And really, really, it will be a book that you can come back to again and again and again and again. So it's not just a one and done.
When you're like 55 and over, you can keep humming again and again. It doesn't end. So there you go.
You're not running out of orgasms there.
Nope.
Okay.
Jizz for days.
We do love each and every one of our listeners. Go ahead, give us a review. If you bought the book, review us on anywhere that you purchased it, because that helps more people find Shameless Sex, and also folks like Gigi Engle, who bring the world so much amazing and incredible information. I've been told by the UK that Americans use the word amazing too much.
So amazing.
Damn it. Incredible. Beautiful. I'm thinking of other adjectives, which I'll come up with.
Gorgeous.
Yes. Beautiful. Okay.
Right.
Well, that also describes
gorgeous.
our listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
That's a good one. Yeah. Gorgeous.
So we love you all. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.